In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you everything you need to know to use the Insta360 Flow2 Pro properly, what hidden features it has, and how to get the most out of the Flow2 Pro. At the same time, I'll tell you what my 20 favorite features of this gimbal are and show you how they work. One of the best features of the Flow2 Pro is that it's extremely quick to set up and activate. To activate the Flow2 Pro properly and quickly, do the following. The best way is to take off the clip and attach your smartphone to the clip. In most cases, you should attach the clip so that it is exactly in the middle of the smartphone. The Insta360 logo should be visible on the back of the smartphone. On the left, you will see a small image of a camera. Next to it is a small arrow pointing upwards. This is an indicator of the direction in which the smartphone camera should be located. So above the camera symbol, make sure that the smartphone is completely inside the bracket and that the bracket is straight. Avoid the side of the clip catching on the edge of the smartphone and leaving a gap. Now you can attach your smartphone to the gimbal. The attachment mechanism is magnetic. Nevertheless, it can sometimes happen that the smartphone is attached. However, the clamp does not lock into place perfectly. This is due to the angle at which you attach the smartphone. You can see that the clamp has an indentation at the top here. At the same time, the gimbal head has a slight elevation here. The indentation and elevation should of course match. I've now placed a lot of emphasis on this process, because if you make a mistake here, the smartphone may not be properly stabilized and you may not understand what the problem is. The gimbal can now be activated very easily by turning the gimbal arm straight up. The best way to do this is to hold it by the gimbal head, and the gimbal activates itself. You don't have to balance the smartphone either. This also happens automatically. If you want to put the gimbal away again, first switch it off by pressing and holding the mode button at the bottom. Now take the gimbal arm by the head again and bend it straight backwards, making sure that the protruding pin engages in the indentation. You can now remove your smartphone from the clamp and stow the gimbal away. Once you have done this 2 or 3 times, it works as if by itself. The second major strength of the Flow2 Pro is that not only the selfie stick is integrated into the gimbal, but also the tripod. To set up the gimbal on a flat surface, simply pull the 3 tripod legs out of the handle and you can now use the gimbal to track yourself, for example, or just set it up somewhere. To use the selfie stick, simply pull the upper part of the gimbal upwards. The selfie stick has a hinge at the upper end that you can bend up to 90 degrees. This way you can not only use the gimbal optimally to film yourself, you can also use the selfie stick as an extension and use the gimbal in the so-called flashlight mode. The selfie stick is also suitable for using the gimbal in underslung mode and filming subjects from a low perspective. To do this, switch on the gimbal and simply turn the handle upwards. The gimbal will adjust the position of the smartphone to the new situation. And the cool thing is, the selfie stick can also be turned to the side at the front hinge. I'll show you what this is good for and why this is a very special feature of the Flow2 Pro a bit later. When you no longer need the selfie stick, simply turn the joint straight and push it back in. But be careful, the top of the handle is not completely straight, so you should angle the joint slightly when pushing the selfie stick in. Otherwise, it won't go all the way in. The next big strength of the Flow2 Pro is its ease of use. To be able to use all the features of the Flow2 Pro, you need to install the Insta360 app. As soon as you have activated the gimbal, as I showed you earlier, start the app. The app will show you right at the beginning whether an update is available. If so, you should install it straight away. Now I'll show you the most important functions of the individual buttons of the gimbal. You have a circular user interface in the center. It has touch functionality on the outer edge. The LED light shows you which mode the gimbal is currently in. Currently in automatic mode. We will come to the different modes in a moment. On the left there is the shutter button, the power or mode button at the bottom, the switch button on the right and the C button at the top. And on the back there is the trigger button. If you've ever used a gimbal before, you will get to grips with the Flow2 Pro extremely quickly, as its basic operation is the same as that of most other gimbals on the market. Of course, you can start and stop a recording with the shutter button. If you press the switch button once, you can switch between the selfie camera and the back camera. If you press it twice, you switch from portrait mode to landscape mode and vice versa. You can also do this by hand. To do this, simply turn your smartphone up or down. You can see here on the right that the app offers various shooting modes. These are mostly the familiar shooting modes: photo, video, time-lapse and so on. If you press the switch button 3 times, you can switch back and forth between the video and the photo mode. And if you press and hold it, you switch to the preview mode. Here you can view your videos and photos. By the way, I'm going to show you all the functions of the buttons now, but you should mainly remember: switch button once, front camera, back camera; switch button twice, portrait mode, landscape mode; If you briefly press the power or M button once, you switch clockwise to the next gimbal mode. So from automatic mode to follow mode. If you press the button twice briefly, you change the mode in the other direction. So back to automatic mode. If you press the power button 3 times, the gimbal goes into standby or sleep mode. And if you press and hold it, you switch the gimbal off. But let's switch it on again. The C button is intended for the creative recording features. If you press it once, the gimbal starts a 360 pan shot. That is, it starts a shot and rotates sideways around its own axis. If you press it twice, you switch to Pano Photo mode, with which you can take real 360 photos. We'll take a closer look at this at the end of the video. If you press and hold the C button, the gimbal performs a barrel roll. Don't worry, at the end of the video, you'll have a good overview of the most important functions. If you press the trigger button once, as you can see, the tracking function is activated. Press it again to deactivate the tracking function. If you press the trigger button twice, the gimbal returns to its original position. You can also freely change the position of the camera with the joystick here in the middle. Then press the trigger button twice and the smartphone returns to its starting position. If you press the trigger button 3 times, the gimbal turns around and you can film yourself with the back camera, for example. This makes sense, because on most smartphones, the main camera has a significantly better recording quality than the selfie camera. And for such shooting situations, the Flow2 Pro has a very special feature. You can see the small round mirror on the back of the gimbal head. You can use it to estimate the framing when filming yourself with the back camera of your smartphone. And it works. The framing in the mirror corresponds roughly to the framing of the main camera of an iPhone. In other words, the camera with a zoom factor of 1x. I've so far overlooked one important control element, the zoom wheel. It's located on the outer edge of the circle, and a very special function of the zoom wheel is one of the best features of the Flow2 Pro for me. You can of course zoom in and out with the zoom wheel. You can see the changed zoom factor here in the app. As a general rule, you should avoid using a zoom factor between the different lenses of your smartphone. This leads to digital crop and thus to a reduction in image quality. So you should only switch back and forth between the individual lenses. I have an iPhone 16 Pro here, which has 3 lenses. These are labeled 0.5x, 1x and 5x. I should therefore only work with these zoom factors. And the special thing about the Flow2 Pro is that you can switch back and forth between the lenses and not just zoom gradually. To do this, you briefly turn the zoom wheel to the far left or right and then leave it off. This way you avoid digital zooming. Okay, we haven't talked about the different stabilization modes yet. And here too, the Flow2 Pro has 2 very special features, so that you understand what is meant by stabilization modes. The gimbal has 3 axes. A tilt axis, it allows movements up and down. A pan axis that enables movements to the left and right, and a roll axis that enables lateral rotations. The Flow2 Pro actually features 7 different stabilization modes. Yes, I know, that's a bit much all at once. But you can watch this video again if you need to. It's divided into chapters, so that you can quickly find the relevant chapter again. So let's start with the follow mode, which is indicated by the small F here on the right. The mode is active when the LED on the right lights up. In follow mode, the gimbal follows lateral movements. That is the movements of the pan axis and the up and down movements. In other words, the movements of the tilt axis. This mode is ideal for following a subject, for example, and also for filming dynamic up and down movements. It gives you a lot of freedom and is therefore not ideal for beginners. Let's switch to pan follow mode. To switch modes, briefly press the power button once, as already mentioned. In pan follow mode, the gimbal only follows lateral movements, so only the movements of the pan axis. Up and down movements of the tilt axis are compensated. As in all other modes, you can use the joystick to set the optimum angle before and during recording. The pan follow mode is of course also suitable for following subjects, and because it does not allow as much freedom, it's more suitable for beginners. The FPV mode is on the left. In FPV mode, the gimbal also follows the movements of the roll axis. This means that lateral rotations can also be performed. This allows you to film very dynamic and natural shots and movements, for example POV shots. You can perform the lateral rotation by turning the gimbal or by using the zoom wheel. For example, you can film a straightforward movement and simultaneously perform the rotation with the zoom wheel. I would say this mode is the least used, but you can achieve very interesting effects with it. If on the other hand you only want to film a very simple forward movement or a sideways movement, for example a dolly forward or a lateral revealing shot, then you can lock all 3 axes. The gimbal will compensate for all movements. It's very simple. You determine the correct shooting angle with the joystick and then press and hold the trigger button. Now the entire inner circle lights up and you are in lock mode. All movements are compensated. Personally, I often use this mode when I want to take simple cinematic shots. However, the freedom of movement is of course very limited. Okay, your gimbal has 3 more modes. Let's say you want to film a subject that moves very fast and changes direction quickly. The movements of your gimbal might be too slow for this. There is the Active Plus mode for such situations. In this mode, you switch on a kind of turbo. Your gimbal will react much faster to your movements. This works in all the modes I've just shown you. You activate the Active Plus mode by briefly pressing the trigger button once and then pressing and holding it a second time. You can see that the mode spot is now flashing quickly. The Active Plus mode is active. And if all these gimbal modes overwhelm you at first, the Flow2 Pro also offers an automatic mode. This is what the top LED light is for. Depending on your movement pattern, the gimbal decides autonomously which movements it will follow and which it will not. This mode is particularly suitable for beginners. It works really good. And the last mode is not an actual stabilization mode, but nevertheless a very special recording mode of the Flow2 Pro. The Flow2 Pro rotates sideways infinitely around its own axis. The pan axis therefore has no limitations. It also has great freedom of movement in the roll axis, and the smartphone can be rotated completely around its own axis. But like most smartphone gimbals, the movement of the tilt axis is very limited. Imagine you are holding the gimbal in flashlight mode and want to take a crane shot, so a straight movement from bottom to top. This does not work very well, as the restricted tilt axis makes a straight movement from bottom to top almost impossible. To solve this problem, the Flow2 Pro features the so-called free tilt mode. For this, you pull out the selfie stick, turn the head upwards, as when using it to film yourself. And now turn the gimbal head left to the side. Now the tilt axis of the Flow2 Pro suddenly has complete freedom of movement and can be rotated completely, allowing you to perform all those gimbal moves that were previously not possible. Advanced users in particular will love this feature. Just don't forget to turn the gimbal head back to the starting position after use. The arrow should point to off before you push the selfie stick in. By the way, if you're interested in which camera movement you should be able to do with a gimbal, then take a look at my corresponding video afterwards. Okay, before we take a closer look at the Insta360 app and its special features, let's talk about the Flow2 Pro's greatest strength, Apple Dockkit. The Flow2 Pro automatically connects to your iPhone via NFC. As you can see here, the NFC field of the gimbal is located on the top of the handle. On the iPhone, the NFC controller is located in the upper area next to the camera. If it does not connect immediately, place your iPhone on the NFC field. As soon as your iPhone is connected, the green ring light will light up continuously. After the first connection, the connection to the iPhone is established automatically. You can now open the iPhone's camera app and the gimbal will start tracking as soon as it recognizes a subject. The green ring light will now flash. The camera will automatically follow the subject. Apple Dockkit therefore enables tracking completely independently from the Insta360 app. To deactivate tracking again, press the trigger button. And press the trigger button again to reactivate tracking. And the best thing is, this works not only with the iPhone camera app, but with all apps that support Dockkit, which are most apps that use the iPhone camera. So social media apps like Instagram or TikTok, but also video conferencing apps like Google Meet or Teams. From now on, you can have your gimbal track you around the room during your next video conference. This can be extremely useful. Most of the buttons retain their usual functionality when using Dockkit. So you can switch gimbal mode as normal or start a recording with the shutter button even when using Dockkit. But, and this also has to be said, the tracking is not as effective and responsive as when using the Insta360 app. In addition, some special tracking features are only available in the Insta360 app. So it's time to take a closer look at the tracking features of the app. Tracking is not only great if you want to film yourself, but also if you're filming a fast-moving subject. You can also activate the tracking function in the app by pressing the trigger button. The app will then automatically select the tracking subject and try to follow the subject. Or you can start tracking by drawing a frame over the subject to be tracked. As soon as tracking is active, the green ring light lights up, so you can see from a distance whether tracking is active and working. If you press the trigger button again, tracking is stopped again. When tracking with the app, you can adjust the framing slightly by changing the position of the subject using the joystick. You may want the subject to be positioned along the lines of thirds rather than in the middle. And in this context, the Flow2 Pro has a function that I particularly appreciate: the Pro Framing Grid. It makes sense if the head of your subject is always in the upper third and not in the middle. It simply looks much better. If you tap on Pro Framing Grid below, you can set the position of your subject in the frame, so in the upper third or even to the side if required. The app also remembers the position for future recordings, but as soon as you close the app, you have to select the framing again the next time you use it. And that's not the only special tracking feature of the Flow2 Pro. The Flow2 Pro can also track multiple people as a group, so that individual people are not cut off at the sides, for example. To do this, simply select more than one person at a time, and you can also select the main subject that the gimbal will follow as soon as the group splits up. As a creator, I'm usually out and about on my own, so I rarely use this. Tracking Plus is much more important to me. If you use the Flow on a tripod and track yourself, then you should definitely activate Tracking Plus. As you can see, the field of view is now significantly larger, probably because the electronic stabilization is deactivated. But the best thing is that the tracking now works even better and more efficiently. You should therefore definitely use this feature if you are using the Flow2 Pro on a tripod for tracking, whether with Tracking Plus or not. Even if the Flow2 Pro loses the subject during tracking, it will recognize it when it reappears in the image. The gimbal is particularly well suited to simply placing it somewhere in the center and tracking yourself. Also because it can rotate laterally around its own axis without limit, and so there is never any danger that the subject can no longer be tracked because the lateral movement limit has been reached. If you want to track a distant subject, for example if you're filming a child from a distance with the iPhone's 5x telephoto lens, you should activate active zoom tracking. This feature significantly improves the tracking function when filming with telephoto lenses. It supports tracking even if you shoot with a zoom factor of up to 15x, which is the maximum zoom factor of the iPhone 15 Pro Max and 16 Pro. And if you are tracking a person, which will probably be the case more often, you can also activate auto zoom. This dynamically adjusts the zoom to the distance of the subject. Both of these features may lead to reduced image quality, which is why I would only recommend them in special situations. A very useful feature of the Flow2 Pro is that you can also use it as a power bank for your smartphone, even while you're using it. This prevents your smartphone from running out of battery while filming. To do this, you need a USB-C charging cable. This one is particularly short and suitable for this purpose, but is unfortunately not included in the packaging. You connect it to the smartphone and at the same time to the underside of the upper gimbal arm. Mind you, at the top and not at the bottom by the zoom wheel. You use the port by the zoom wheel to charge the gimbal. If you switch off the gimbal, the charging function is also stopped. However, you do not necessarily have to actively use the gimbal to charge your smartphone. If you just want to use the gimbal as a power bank, then fold it up, plug in your smartphone and briefly press the power button on the gimbal and you have a normal power bank. I'm an absolute solo creator. Almost all of my videos have been created by me alone. That's why I love the next feature, gesture control. You can start and stop recording from a distance using hand movements. For example, your gimbal is on the tripod and you're filming yourself with the back camera. In this case, it can be useful if you can start and stop the recording from a distance. You have to activate gesture control in the app. You will see a hand symbol at the top. Tap on it and you can now activate various hand gestures. 2 fingers to start a recording or to take a photo. The open hand for tracking a single person and thumb and index finger for multi-person tracking. And gesture control is not the only way to control the Flow2 Pro from a distance. The Flow2 Pro has another very useful and innovative feature. You can control the gimbal remotely with a second smartphone and even get a preview image. And the cool thing is, you don't even need to have the Insta360 app installed on the second smartphone. Just tap on the icon here on the right and use the second smartphone to open the web browser by scanning the QR code. The preview image is now embedded in the website and you can control the most important functions remotely. This is also a very cool feature for solo creators. And the app also offers a few other very useful features. But before I show you these, a few words about the basic settings. Before you even start recording, you should set the resolution and frame rate in the app. If you're not very familiar with the camera settings, you can simply use 4K and 30 frames per second to start with. You can set the exposure and white balance manually using the camera icon here in the middle. An interesting feature, as this is not possible with the iPhone standard camera app. In the menu of the gimbal icon, you can set the gimbal mode, adjust the motor strength, change the follow speed and joystick speed, and most importantly, calibrate the gimbal if it does not bring the smartphone into a straight position, but into a slightly tilted position. But be aware, this is usually not due to poor calibration of the gimbal, but to incorrect attachment of the clamp. It's also interesting that with this setting, the zoom wheel can also be used for manual focus. This is very cool, because it allows you to perform a manual focus pull. And via the 3 dots, you open the general settings menu, where you can, very importantly, activate the HDR feature of your iPhone. I would definitely do this if you mainly watch your videos on your smartphone. Here you can also switch on scene recognition, and for the professionals among you, activate Apple ProRes and thus lock. You can activate GPS or take another look at the tutorial and the functions of the buttons. But I want to show you something else today. We have seen that if you press the switch button 3 times, you can switch back and forth between photo and video mode. But the app also has other modes. There are the usual time-lapse, time shift and slow motion modes, as well as a few very special shooting modes. I'll show you the best ones in a moment. By the way, you don't necessarily have to use the app to switch recording modes. You can also do this directly on the gimbal by swiping clockwise or counterclockwise on the circular touch field. This will take you to the right or upper mode, or to the left or down if you swipe counterclockwise. Mind you, don't press, just swipe. The hoop mode is an AI-controlled recording mode for basketball games. The live mode is intended for live streams or video conferences. This mode is no longer as interesting now that Dockkit is available. In widescreen mode, you can shoot in a cinematic widescreen format, and with the dolly zoom, you can reproduce the vertigo effect. This means that the background becomes wider and narrower. You can see an example of this here. But before I show you my favorite special mode, I'd like to show you a few more functions of the app. With the third icon from the left, you can activate different color filters. With this icon here, on the other hand, you can activate face filters, for example to smooth the skin. And on the far right, there is a very special feature, the teleprompter. Here you can insert text, which is then automatically displayed line by line as soon as you start a recording. You can adjust the size of the text and also change the scroll speed. An absolutely cool feature for creators. But now I'd like to show you my favorite special mode, the Pano Photo mode. You can also quickly switch to this mode by pressing the C button twice. With the Pano Photo mode, you can take 360 photos with a conventional smartphone. In other words, a 360 shot without a 360 camera. You can select the resolution here, and for high resolution recordings, you need to attach the clip to the smartphone in a different way. This time, the back of the bracket must be attached to the front of the smartphone, and not in the middle, but in the lower third. The gimbal must be placed on the tripod. Now simply start your recording and the app will take a 360 photo. To do this, the gimbal will move completely in a circle. There are also a few presets for editing the photo. It looks really cool. Well, I think you now know pretty much everything you need to know about the Insta360 Flow2 Pro to take fantastic shots. Don't forget, attach the clamp correctly for optimal stabilization. Press the switch button twice and you switch between portrait mode and landscape mode. Press the trigger button twice and the gimbal is centered again. Press the trigger button 3 times and the gimbal turns around. I hope you have a lot of fun with this excellent gimbal. In case you still want to get the Flow2 Pro, if you use the link in the video description, you will receive the very useful magnetic phone mount as a free gift. This makes attaching the smartphone to the gimbal even easier. If you are interested in how well the gimbal performs compared to the Osmo Mobile 6, you can watch my corresponding video. Or if you are more of a beginner, I highly recommend my video on the best gimbal moves. There will be more videos on the Flow2 Pro, so stay tuned and see you next time.